I just wanted to come on and do a little short testimony with everybody and say a prayer. But anyway, it's like a little after 2 this afternoon. It's Friday, August 23rd, I think, of 2004. Anyway, so this has been a while back when this happened. I went to see my daughter in Las Vegas because she was having a baby, and I wanted to be there when the baby was born. So I drove in from Florida to Las Vegas. And if anybody's ever made that trip, you know that it takes, a few days if you're driving. So I made it, and, a lot of stuff happened. There's a whole nother testimony in that before I got there. But, so that's for another day. I'll get to that one later. But I got there, stayed there for a little while, about 3 months or so, and things weren't going exactly the way I wanted them to, or thought they should have, or whatever. And I drove there by myself up there with my doggie. She went with me on the way up, but she got sick when we were there, so I had to put her down. So on the way back, it was just me, and I was driving, and I'd been driving for quite a while. I don't know where I was at. I had probably drove 8 or 9 miles. Okay, I mean 8 or 9 hours. Sorry, and so I had drove a little ways. It'd been like a while. I'd been driving, and so I got tired, and I decided to pull over at this station and get something to eat, something to drink, whatever. Sit down for a little minute, take a break. Get my eyes open, get moving around a little bit. Because sometimes when you're driving, your eyes just tend to just keep closing. So you have to stop. Well, anyway, so I stopped at this little store and I ate and did all that and went to the bathroom, did all the things I had to do. And as I was leaving the little store, I was getting ready to pull off of this little dirt road onto the highway road, that took you on back onto the highway, whatever, the interstate. But anyway, as I was getting ready to do that, I was riding pretty slow on this little road because it was bumpy, and I seen this man, and he was standing there. He had like a backpack thing beside him, but I didn't pay attention too much other than that because I didn't have time. As I was like barely coming up to him, the Lord said, "Stop. Ask him what he wants." Well, I'm thinking to myself in my mind, okay, God, but all right, maybe he just wants some something money, something to eat, something to drink, or something like that. I said, but God, if he wants a ride, I'm by myself, and I don't want to be ignorant. So if he don't bring you up within the first minute, I am not giving him no ride. Now this is me talking to God, and I'm telling God, hey, I'll do whatever you tell me to do, but if, you know, if you want me to give this man a ride, he's got to bring you up within a minute, or I'm gonna keep on riding. Well, I had already passed him just a little bit, not much, so I backed up, and he come walking up to my window as I put the window down, and he said, I had just threw my sign down. He said, I told God you don't care about me. He said, he said, I've been standing there for 2 hours with my sign, and he said, and nobody, not one soul, stopped to check on me. He said, and I'm tired. He said, I've been traveling for years, and I'm tired. He said, and I just told God, you just gave up. He said, I just gave up. He said, I told him, you don't care about me, God. You don't care about me. And so when I stopped, and he said that, I said, oh, thank you, Jesus, because within the first 3 seconds, he said, I just told God he don't care about me. That was the first words out of his mouth. Do you understand that? And I had asked God before I backed up, or told him rather, that if the man don't bring you up, I ain't giving him no ride. And so within the first 3 seconds of the time that I backed up, and he put down the window, by the time the window went down and he stepped up to it, he said, I just got through telling God. God flew right out of his mouth within those 3 seconds. God threw out of his mouth. And he said, I told him, you don't care about me. And I thought, if I had just kept riding, that poor man would have thought God didn't love him, that God didn't care about him, that God wasn't thinking about him. But let me tell you how good God is. Because God knew I was a woman alone by myself driving, and I had days to go. And so he knew that I trusted him and I had faith, but that I wasn't going to be ignorant and pick up a hitchhiker to take somewhere unless I knew God was in it. But by that man's first words coming out of his mouth, he said, I just told God that he don't care about me. And I said, well, you're wrong. I said, because God told me to go back and ask you, what do you want? What do you need? And he said, you really want to know what I need? He said, you really want to know what I've been talking to the Lord about? I said, sure, tell me, please. And he said, I told the Lord, I need a ride. I need a ride to Texas. And Texas was probably at least a day or so away, from me. I don't know how many miles that was, but it was at least a day and a half, 2 days from me, where I was at, going home. About 2 days, probably. Anyways, and I said, okay, jump in. God already reassured me that it was okay, because I asked him that if I was supposed to give you a ride to let you bring him up, and you did. First thing. So I can't say no. Get your stuff and get in. And as he was getting in, I seen this little ugly, shabby dog that looked as bad as he did. Bless his heart. His hair was really long, and he had a long, shabby beard, and he was really dirty. Probably hadn't had a shower or anything in a long time, and he hadn't cut his hair probably in a long time. He hadn't had clean clothes or bath in a long time. I don't know. It didn't matter, because God told me to go back and ask him what he wanted. And so when he got up and I told him to get in the car, and let's go, he did. And like I said, his little doggy jumped in, and he jumped in the back. He was very, very respectful, very polite, and he didn't even get in the front with me. He jumped into the back. He put his backpack back there, and his little doggy jumped in. And he said, I just want you to know, I've been trying for 2 days to get somebody to give me a ride. He said, and I've been standing out here for 2 hours in the hot sun, talking to God, telling him I just want to go home. He said, I've been gone for 3.5 years. He was only about 21. He said, maybe 22. And he said, I haven't seen my mother in almost 3.5 years, and she doesn't even know I'm alive. He had not called her or anything in that amount of time. And I couldn't imagine, your teenager just disappearing, and you don't really know where they're at. You don't know what they're doing. You haven't seen them in years, and and him not seeing his family in years, and so he's probably trying to figure out. He said, I don't know what I was searching for. He said, but I was on a journey with my soul. He said, I was searching for God, I guess. He said, I went through every kind of religion you can think of, and gave it a little tiny try. And he said, but then everything kept leading me back to God. And he said, I've been traveling for all these years, these 3.5 years, seeing the world and trying to learn new things. And he said, and trying to fill this empty void. He said, and nothing filled the void but God. Anyway, that's so we were just riding, like I said, and we drove for a long, long way. I don't know. Probably went at least another 8 or 10 hours driving, just talking about God the whole time, talking about his adventures, that trying to find God, that his parents were Christian parents, and before he left he was rebelling against what he had been taught, basically, about the Lord. He was kind of rebelling, and so whatever you call it. Anyway, so he said that he knew that in his heart his mother would want to see him, but he wasn't quite sure how to tell her he was still alive, or even ask her if he could come back home. So he just figured he'd wait for a little bit and then try to call her and surprise her when he got closer. And I said, you know what? I said, if your mother is a Christian woman, she's been begging God daily to let her hear from you. I said, I'm a mother. I have a daughter that doesn't really talk to me much. And I said, and I beg God a lot to hear from her. I said, and so I know if your mom's anything to do with God, she's asking God to let her hear from you, to let her hear from anybody about you, even to just know that you're okay. And so I said, please go ahead and call her. So we stopped at this little station, and he called his mom, and He hadn't talked to her in 3.5 years, mind you. She thought he was kidnapped or dead, or she didn't know what happened, you know. Anyways, the first thing he said was, Mom, and she said, I can't remember his name, guys. I'm sorry. This was like 8 years ago, okay? So don't be mad at me. I can't remember his name. We're just gonna call him Chris, because I don't know. I don't know. I think it was Christopher or Alex or something. I don't know. I don't remember. But anyway, she said his name and she said, Is it really you? And he said, Mama, it is, and I'm sorry. And she started just bawling and bawling. And I could feel her excitement, and sadness, and happiness, and oh my God, relief, all of that she was feeling over just the first few minutes of her emotions on that phone with him. And they were both, you could tell she was just bawling and he was crying. And she said, Son, can you please come home? What? I don't want to, she said, I don't want to know why you left. It doesn't even matter. I just want you to come home. And he said, Mama, I'm on my way. And she said, Well, where are you? And at that time, like I said, we were still 17, 18 hours away from her. And he said, I'm with this nice lady that pulled over to ask if she could help me. And he said, and she told me she would take me to Texas to our store. And see, they lived in Texas. I don't remember what part of Texas, but he said they had this certain little store that they would meet up when, he'd run off sometimes at night and she'd come find him and that's where he'd be. Anyway, and it was like maybe 15 minutes from his house. Anyway, he said, Mom, he said, I'll be at that little store in about 17, 18, maybe 20 hours. He said, we're driving. It might take us a while, but I'm coming. And she said, let me talk to this lady. So I got on the phone and she said, Ma'am, she said, thank you. I can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart. She said, I've been praying for my son to come home for a long time. She said, I didn't know if he was dead or alive, if I'd ever see his face again. She said, so thank you, and may God bless you for doing this. Little did she know God was already blessing me just through their testimony, just through knowing that this son, this prodigal son, was going home. And like the prodigal son in the Bible where he had left his father for a little while and he went to live, by himself, and he ended up losing everything. And he was trying to eat with the swine and he was scared. He said, but even the servants eat better than I do. And so he said, but I hurt my father when I left, and I know I did, so I'm scared to go back. He had a brother that he had left there, that the brother thought, since the other brother had ran away, that he'd become his dad's favorite, and dad would forget about the other brother and so forth. Of course, that didn't happen. When the Lord said that when the man saw his son, even from a distance, he got all excited. And he started making him, he had him go kill a calf or whatever, and he started cooking for him and having everything set up for him as he was coming there. And he met him, and he just welcomed him in. And it just reminded me of the prodigal son. And it was beautiful. Anyway, so I was speaking to his mother, and she was telling me how grateful she was. And I told her I completely understood, because I was a mother, and I had a daughter that hadn't spoken to me in 7 years. Longer than that now. But at that time, it'd been about 7 years. Now it's been about 14. But anyway, so I knew exactly how she felt. I know I would be rejoicing if my child was saying she was coming to see me, In any case, so we were still traveling, and we were going and going after we got off the phone, and he said, and he was still crying when we hung up with his mom, and he said, he looked at me and he said, what a relief. He said, I was so scared to call. I was so scared to ask if I could go home. He said, but you encouraged me, and I was headed that way regardless. He said, but I don't know that I could have actually made it or even really done it if you wouldn't have stopped to help me. So the moral to this story is, I mean, if you want to know the rest, yes, we traveled. I don't know. It was like another. I was anxious to get him home, so I think I went another 17 hours after driving 9 hours before that. Anyways, we finally and we got lost. We were on this trying to listen to GPS, and it took us like 300 miles out in the middle of a desert somewhere, and there was nothing, nothing out there, like hardly no stations, nothing. And so we was just starting to think we're never going to find a town, and that was another reason we just kept driving and driving and driving because there was nowhere to stop. So, anyways, we finally came. I told him, I said, Lord, anything will do. Just help us get to a little town that's got a small motel or something with some gas. I said, anything will do. It doesn't matter what it looks like. I just please get us there. And about the time we said that prayer, we both looked up and we seen this little bitty tiny motel out in the middle of nowhere. I'm talking about it was a motel and a gas station. Okay. And it was together, if that tells you anything. Whoever run the gas station also run the motel. So, anyways, but the name of the motel, I have to tell you this because it was so funny. Because I had just told God anything will do. The name of the motel was It'll Do. I kid you not. I kid you not. The name of the motel was It Will Do. And that's exactly what it was. It was a It Will Do situation. But who cared? It was only $25 that night. And when we got there, the little guy was so nice. And we were both wore slap out. And we both wanted to shower and just go to bed because we was exhausted. And so there was only one bed. And so I got in the shower first, did my thing, and then he says, I'm gonna get in the shower too." And he said, "I would really like to be able to shave, and maybe you could cut my hair, so that I won't look so scrappity when I see my mother." I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." Well, before that, I had already took his little dog in the bathroom with me as we was taking a shower, and I done bathed him, and I gave him a haircut while we were in the bathroom. The little dog needed it, needed it so bad. It was a little sit shoe, but you couldn't tell what it was. It looked like a little mop. But anyways, time I got done, and he was the cutest little thing you ever seen. Then after that, he was clean. His little hair was fine. It was short, and he looked all spunky and happy and just full life. Just looked great. But anyway, so I told the guy, I said, "Sure." I said, let me run across here to this little station and get some gas while it's still, possible to do, and I'll see if they got any razors or anything over there." And he says, "Okay." So I ran over to the little station, and I know it was God, because most of the little tiny stations, especially stations in little stations out in the middle of nowhere, that little country station basically, because that's all it was, desert country. So anyway, I thought to myself, "Oh my gosh, this place ain't gonna have razors for sure." I got in there, and it had pretty much anything you needed. It had clothes, it had razors, it had anything and everything you needed. So I went in there and I bought some clippers and some scissors and some razors, and I bought him a set of clothes because I didn't know what he had in his backpack, and for all I knew, everything he had was dirty. Who knew when he had a bath or when he had to ever got a chance to wash his clothes? So I bought him a little outfit. I just bought him a t-shirt, a pair of jeans, and a pair of tennis shoes. And so when I got over there, um, back to the motel, he had just got out of the shower and everything, and I brought him all the stuff in, and he's like, "Ma'am, I can't pay you for that. I don't have any money." I said, "I'm not asking you to give me any money." I said, "God's telling me what to do for you because, you're going to meet your mom." I said, "And you want your mom to see you looking good." I said, "And I want your mom to see you looking good." I said, "And it would just bless my heart to do this for you." So he said, "Well, thank you, and I appreciate it." So anyway, we did that. He put the new clothes on. I cut his hair real nice, and first I had to cut his beard because it was like way down to here. So I cut the beard until it could be where you could shave it, and then he shaved it. And I promise you, the man that I picked up didn't look like anything like the young man that was standing before me as we was getting ready to leave the little It'll Do motel to go find, go some little further to find his mother. Anyway, so after we left the motel, it was probably another 3 hours, I believe, that we drove, and we pulled up at this little store that he was supposed to meet his mom at. And he's all excited, and he calls, about 15 minutes or 20 minutes or so, because that's how far it was from their house. So he called about 15, 20 minutes before we got towards there. And he told her, we're almost there. We're so many minutes away. Mom, we're almost there. And she said, okay, son, I'll meet you there. So we get there, and I, of course, pull up to the gas pumps and then go in and do whatever I had to do in there. And then he's just sitting out front of the store, waiting patiently, because his mother hadn't got there yet. And so he was waiting patiently, and so I was like, oh, please let her show up, please let her show up, please don't let him be, standing there praying and hoping that she's coming, and then she just changed her mind for some reason. And I don't know why I thought that. You just think things sometimes in your head, you don't really know why. But in any case, as I was walking out thinking that in my mind, she pulled up. And what a beautiful reunion. He ran to his mother, and she ran to him, and they met in the middle, and she just gave him the biggest hug I've ever seen anybody give anybody in my life. It was like she just lifted him off the ground. She was so happy to see him. And then she come running over to me, because he said, I could see him pointing at me like, Eleanor, that's the one that helped me. And she come running over to me, and she grabbed me, and she hugged me, and she held me, and she cried, and she said, mother to mother, I can't thank you enough. And I said, well, thank God, because God is the one that told me to stop. I said, and most women that are riding alone and know they got a long journey to go ain't gonna pick up some stranger, especially someone that looked the way he did at the time, and trust God enough to take them wherever they gotta go, knowing that God's got us, and he's not going to let anything happen to me because I trust him and I serve him. And that's exactly what happened. If I know I gave God a little ultimatum at the moment, but you don't really give God ultimatums. But just because I was alone and I wanted to be safe, I said, Lord, please, if it's your will, let him bring you up within the first 3 seconds to a minute. And he did. Like, the first things out of his mouth is what he was talking about. So, and the whole time that he was riding with me, it wasn't just a blessing for him, but it was a blessing for me, because first of all, the company, he kept me company, and all we did was talk about God the whole time. The whole time we talked about God and his miracles that he'd been working for us and showing us all during our lives and stuff. And so, by the time this little feller got back to his mom, he was ready to learn more about God and serve him. Okay, so not only did he get to go home, but he got to find God, all because I obeyed the Lord. So my question for you today is, if God tells you to do something, even if it seems really hard, and it seems like, it's kind of scary, maybe you got a little fear about it, and you're like, well, God, okay, but if this is you, then you got to give me a sign that it's you by letting me know what to do. So what my point is, God will. He'll give you a sign of what to do, but he'll either send someone to tell you to help you, guide you, or he'll send you something from out of his word to help guide you. But he will direct your paths if you trust him enough to allow him to. Okay? Anyways, so the point of this whole testimony is this. Don't be afraid to obey God. Really listen to him. Trust him. Know he's got your back, your front, your side, and everything within you. And that he's in you and with you. Wherever you go, whatever you do, he's with you. He's got you. Trust him. Trust him enough to do the hard things. The things that seem scary. The things that make you think, oh, should I have done that? Are you sure, God? You really want me to do this? Yeah. When he confirms it, do it. If you don't, you might miss the biggest blessing of your entire life. When I look back, this testimony to me was awesome. It was great. I would have really hated it if I'd have missed out on helping that boy get back home to his mom. That would have been like a humongous blessing that I would have just not got to see. And I would have missed out by not listening to the Lord. And I'm telling you, sometimes we have to let go of something or just really truly trust Him. Whatever it is He tells us to do, we have to trust Him enough to know that whatever He tells us to do, He's got us and He's going to pull us through it. If He brings you to it, He's going to lead you through it, okay? That's always been my motto. If He brings me to it, He will see me through it. And I knew it was God as soon as that boy said something about the Lord. And God will give you a complete automatic knowing in your mind when He's telling you to do something. And if you're not really sure, just tell Him, God, I need one more little thing to confirm what you're telling me. And He'll either give you something in His word or from somebody or something, but He will let you know what you need to do if you trust Him and ask Him to. He'll guide you and tell you what to do. And so the moral of this testimony basically is follow what God tells you, trust Him, and praise God that child got to go home. What a beautiful testimony for him in the future even. And for me, because it blessed my heart to see a mother so happy and a son so happy, and God reunite people the way that He did, and just the way that He did it. It was beautiful to me. And so all I'm saying is another thing I got out of the story was, don't be afraid to go home. If there's something that you've done, maybe you ran for whatever reason, and now you're afraid to go back. I was that way when I was young. I ran away 3 days before I turned 18, and I married somebody that I only knew 3 weeks because he was willing to marry me and take me out of state. And the reason I wanted to run away and get out of state is because at the time I was pregnant by another man. And I told the man that I married that I was pregnant and that I was afraid that if my mom or dad found out, my dad might possibly beat me till I lost it. I really wasn't sure what he would do to me or what he would do to the man that I had been with, the boy, whatever, guy. I mean, we were both young. We were both the same age. I was, like I said, almost 18, and he was like 19. But anyways, beside the point, I was afraid. I was afraid of my father, of what he would do or say, or if he would harm me or the baby and cause me to lose it. And I, for some reason, desperately wanted this baby. I'd always wanted to be a mother, even though I guess that was the main reason too. One of the main reasons, because I'd prayed about it all my life, and when I was 12, they told me I'd never be able to have children. Never be able to have children. So when I got pregnant, that was God saying, the devil is a lie. And so everything in me that wanted to be a mother just kicked right back in, and I was like, I cannot take a chance to lose this child. So I ran away because I was afraid of what circumstance might happen if I didn't. So I ran away with somebody I really didn't even try, I really even know. I just knew a little bit. He was one of my friends' brothers, and he was supposedly a pastor, preacher, Christian. Because even then, even though I messed up, I was still serving God then. And I loved God with all my heart. And I knew I'd messed up, but I wasn't about to let go of this baby. So I did the only thing I knew how to do, run. And so the first one that said that he would marry me, he said, well, it was like just an agreement. It wasn't even any love really involved at the time. At first, it was like, just, yeah, I need a wife for the church that I'm going to try to start being a music minister at. So yeah, I'll marry you, blah, 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 blah. So I ran away with this man. And for 3.5 years, I went through pure hell, to be honest with you. That's a whole nother testimony for another day. Anyway, I finally made up my mind that I couldn't take anymore, and I was scared because I wasn't sure if my mom and dad would even want me back or allow me to come back or even want to talk to me because of the way that I left them. I broke their hearts. They worried about me for a long time, and I broke their hearts. And so I was scared to go back home. But at the same time, I was scared to stay where I was. So I finally decided to get brave enough and call my mom and dad and ask them, could I come home? And you know what they said to me? My dad and my mom, I could hear in the background, but my dad's, the first thing he said is, what have you been waiting for? He said, we've been waiting on you to call us for a long time. He said, you should have already came home. He said, nobody's mad at you. We are worried about you. We need you to come home. And for me to hear that in the situation that I was in was everything to me because I was so afraid to go home, but I knew I had to. I needed to. I needed their help. And God made it so easy because He was like, everything, I prayed about it and everything else, and the Lord just let it just be like it was their idea. I didn't even have to come right out and say, can I come home? No, He said basically, and He's pretty much said, before I could even finish anything, where are you? Do you need us to come get you? What are you doing? Where are you at? What's happening? Well, they sent me some money to get a bus to go home, and the money was in my purse and in a diaper bag that I had in the car. And when my ex-husband took me to this bus stop, I was 8.5 months pregnant with my second daughter. My oldest one was like 17 months old, and the other one, I was 8.5 months with her. And so he says, I get out of the car, and he says, I'll be right back. I'm just going to the store right up here. I'm going to grab something to drink, and I'll be right back. My money, my mom and dad had sent me for a ticket. My daughter's cup and milk and snacks and whatever else, her clothes, my clothes, everything was in the car, including my purse with the ticket and what little bit of money they sent me to get home with. He never came back. He never came back. And again, that's another testimony for another day. But anyways, just to finish it, so I don't leave you hanging with that. He didn't come back. I sat at the bus stop listening to my baby scream all day because she was thirsty and she was hungry, and I had no money and I had no way to go anywhere. I called my mom and dad, but they didn't have any more money to send because they have always been poor. They were always poor. We were always basically poor. We were migrant workers growing up, and that means following the fruits and vegetables and picking them. And yeah, okay. In case some people didn't know what that means, and they've changed what it is now. We were harvesters, okay, and I'm still a harvester for God, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of my background. I'm proud of where I come from because He taught me how to harvest and plant.